Hey, welcome to the D.I.Y. Garage, the podcast for hands-on, do-it-yourself automotive enthusiasts. I'm Brian Joslin, coming to you from inside the workshop studio of the Eastwood Company in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Hanging out with me today is our own Adam Fair. As our video producer, Adam's usually behind the camera for these recordings, but we're bringing him out in front today. He's obviously no stranger to on-camera work either, as you've no doubt seen him in countless product and project videos on Eastwood's YouTube channel. Before we get going, just a reminder that you can catch the DIY Garage podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and other popular podcast services. And of course, video episodes are always on Eastwood's YouTube channel. Or just go to eastwood.com/garage and click on the podcast tab. However you watch or listen, give us a like and subscribe, and we certainly appreciate it. So welcome to the show, Adam.
Hey, how's it going?
The other side of the show. So
yeah, it's nice to be on this side of the camera.
Yeah. Again, because we actually did a pilot episode that never really aired, but
we did use it for promo material.
We did, yes. So you're out there on the other side of the camera, but this is your first official guest seating. So anyway, yeah, welcome to this side of the show. We're recording. It's early September at this point, and I kind of wanted to just take an episode to talk about show season. It's kind of winding down for us. There's a few things on the agenda still for the rest of the season, but for the most part, it's winding down. And just wanted to, I guess, reassess, some of the stuff we've done this year and look at what's still on the calendar. It's kind of a weird time of the year for those of us that are used to going out to car shows because the calendar is about to get thinner, but the driving's a lot better. Mm-hmm. It's a good time of the year to be in the car behind the wheel. So, anyway.
Yeah.
Did you get out to much this season?
So I guess as far as our podcast goes, it's kind of interesting because we kicked off with Matt Murray in April.
Yeah. At
the beginning of the season, and we were talking about how slammed the calendar was, and then we've lived through most of it, and that was an accurate guess.
Yeah.
I got out to a few. So those of you guys that know me, big into the mini truck scene. I didn't get to go to my favorite show, which is in Maggie Valley, North Carolina this year, for mini nats, but did still manage to get out to a few in Maryland. I hit that Good Guys show.
Right.
And then we just had the Lowshow this past weekend. But yeah, I think I hit like 5 or 6 shows.
Yeah. I hit just a couple. It was a busy summer. We had a kid going off to college, so that's kind of preoccupied our entire summer. But I got out to a couple local, primarily Volkswagen shows, because that's where my crowd of old friends and network is at. So, and ironically, we're going to talk about Lowshow, which is also more of the same, but wasn't as big a show season for me. I'd hoped earlier in the year to get out to the Ace Cafe in New Hope. They opened a new location. If you're not familiar, it's the iconic London Cafe.
Is it the same company?
It's a licensed franchise of the original Ace Cafe. Went out and visited the restaurant. It didn't really have the vibe I was hoping for, and I really never got back out to the event. But they're doing, every night they're doing a different theme. So they've got German cars and bikes. They've got a station wagon night. They've got hot rod night. And it's frankly, it's just been too tough to know what's going to be there. But that's kind of in my backyard. I was hoping I'd be spending more time down there, and it just hasn't materialized at all. So it's kind of a lost opportunity this year. We'll see.
I feel like I have a buddy that he's a single dude. He has a little less obligations than I do. And like every weekend he's like, you want to hit this Cars and Coffee? And I live in Norristown. They'll be in like Conshohocken or Ambler or something really close.
Something close, yeah.
And I'm like, well, maybe if I push the thing till noon, I could go to the car show for 2 hours. Yeah. And then I'm like, yeah, never mind. Nah, dude, I can't make it. Yeah, it just happens.
Constantly negotiating other schedule obligations, especially with family and everything. So it gets tough. On the other hand, Nick, our boss here, goes to, I think, 7 events every weekend locally. I'm always amazed at how much stuff he ends up doing. Some of it with his kid and a lot of it on his own, but dude's always at an event.
He definitely gets around. I mean, the other thing is like he's driving a Bug, so maybe it's just because he gets better fuel mileage. I have this.
Maybe
the C10's getting like 14 to like 20 on the best day.
Yeah.
So it's expensive to like pick up and like go somewhere.
He tends to stay local, I know, but he did come out to one event. There was a Wings and Wheels event at Van Zandt Airport, which is out my way again. A good hour-plus drive for him. And he and his son Matthew came out in the dune buggy, which was quite a haul, actually, in a in a fiberglass dune buggy with, it was July, I think. So
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
a really hot day. Amazing atmosphere because there's a biplane grass field airport there. And biplanes were taking off all day. They were doing rides, and the cars just kept coming and coming and coming. I think they just didn't have enough staff to actually manage the attendance. It kind of appeared out of nowhere. We were on one of the back roads waiting to come in, and I thought, oh, this is going to pass. And it was the line. It was the entire line.
So funny enough, Van Sant, it's like a little local grass runway airport. Yeah, pretty close to where you live, but not far from our work, like an hour.
Yeah.
For anybody listening, not from the immediate like Philadelphia area. But that place is always kind of popping.
Yeah.
Like we started riding street bikes and we would go up there on like a random Sunday or Saturday, and it always has something going on. Like there's always a line of bikes running down the driveway, or a couple cool, like, you know, like a Triumph or an MG or something like kind of up your alley. I don't know, for whatever reason. But there's always cool stuff happening there. And then I actually missed that show, and I was like kind of bummed. I was like, oh man, I was out on the street bike too.
That was definitely the one to be at this year, locally for me anyway. You know, it's funny you say the bikes because as we were in line, kind of waiting to get up to where the entry was, we saw these packs of bikes going by, and we're like, oh, you know, this is probably some like motorcycle club that came over for the weekend. Because they like to come over from New Jersey and ride without helmets a lot of times in Pennsylvania. And, you know, the roads out there are fantastic. So we thought, it's just a bunch of guys that got screwed, you know, on their unplanned run, you know, and they were all bikes going to the show as well. So there were motorcycles, a whole hangar full of motorcycles, cars of all kinds, imports, street rods, everything. And then, of course, the airplanes. So I think, you know, for anyone who's into anything motorized, you really couldn't be disappointed. It was a huge show. We were overwhelmed.
I mean, so as far as kind of untraditional or non-traditional shows, and also back to kind of what kicked us off, the one thing that we do still have on the calendar for October is TROG, Race of Gentlemen.
Yeah, that's happening this year? Yeah, I haven't followed it this year. I've always wanted to get out to that.
So for a little bit of background, so it was this like bi-coastal event that would happen in like Long Beach, California. They would do old school drags on the beach, and then they would do them in like the spring out there, and then they would come in the fall and take over Wildwood, which is kind of rad. And then that went for a couple years, but then I don't know if it was COVID issues or whatever, scheduling. We went, I guess, last year, but it got rained out because we got a hurricane that weekend.
Right, the hurricane, yeah.
Which was kind of sad because it was like, I know we were down there, a couple of buddies with hot rods were down there, and it's like, you're already there, but the beach was flooded, so like you couldn't really do anything. But that one's cool. Like I'm not a, you know, traditional hot rod guy or anything, but it's neat. Everybody like dresses in their garb and whatever, but it's cool. It's definitely one that's nice to kind of like cap off the end of the season with.
Yeah, it's got a nice like 50s vintage vibe to it the whole weekend, you know. The cars, there's a limit on the age of the cars, right? I think it's 1955 and earlier or something
it's
like that.
I think it's like 54. So they're like super specific. So you have to build them as if you were a greaser in his garage
Period, correct.
Like 1953.
Right.
So you can use a small block, but it has to be like one of the first 2 years without oil filters.
Wow.
And then like suspension wise, it has to be all like traditional stuff. There's no billet.
Right.
You know, you can't just slap something together.
No
There's
Willwood, none of the big, you know, popular stuff
and like
today.
the cars that are racing like at the upper end have to be making like 150 horsepower kind of thing. Like maybe they're doing a little more, but like they have a 4-cylinder class and they're original flathead 4-cylinders. So it's like, they're not power
not
machines,
fast.
But it is cool. And like they do a good job as far as like the accoutrement. So like the tents and everything are in that same style. They have like the one year I went, they had like a wall of death. Mm-hmm. So they had 2 dudes on like old Harleys, like spinning around or whatever. It's neat. I mean, and it's cool just to see like rooster tails of sand,
right?
You know, when they take off. There's a part of me that's like, it's kind of silly to like dress up in costume almost, but then I'm like, you like feel like you're in the 50s, so it's kind of cool.
I think those period correct events. There's I think it's this week's happening in England is the Goodwood Revival, which is kind of a post-war motorsport theme vintage gathering. Big deal over there. A lot of British sports cars. They're flying World War II bomber planes around and things for atmosphere. But it's definitely encouraged that you come in period correct clothing. So a lot of tweeds, a lot of like long dresses on the women and stuff. They're kind of cool. Yeah, it's kind of a hokey costume party. But I don't see it as being any different if you're a fan of the cars of that era and some of the style that came with it. I don't see it as being any different than like a Phillies fan wearing a Phillies jersey if they never played baseball professionally. You're showing your fandom in a different way, and it's more than just the car. And I think, at least for the Goodwood event and some of the others that I'm familiar with, it seems to be a little more inclusive. Like, it's something I would take my wife to. She wouldn't probably come out to, she doesn't come out to Cars and Coffees with me much anymore. But she would definitely come out to something that had a little bit more of a party atmosphere around more than just the cars, Like, she's over listening to guys in parking lots talk about all their mods and all that stuff.
I'm sure everybody has this, like, same experience, like taking their wife, girlfriend, significant other to a show where it's like, I can geek out and talk to you about like your seat covers for like an hour, but then like you like your significant other's tugging on your sleeve like, oh my gosh, how long are we going to be here? Or even if they don't, maybe they're like a real trooper. Like, my wife's awesome, but you just know you're like, you're so bored right now. Like, now I feel bad kind of thing. So yeah, I do think like exactly like Race of Gentlemen's one that I plan on taking my wife to. Because there's way more going on that you can kind of geek out on. And yeah, I guess to that point, the costuming's part of it.
It speaks to the broader lifestyle instead of just the core product at the center of it,
Yeah.
So.
You mentioned the like dressing up. So I used to work on the West Coast, and I had this boss. His name was Steven, and he like, we always joked that he was like from another planet.
Yeah.
And I geek out for sports. Like, I'm from Philadelphia. I love like the Phillies, Flyers, Sixers, Eagles. Like 4 for 4. If you ever call into like the local station, is like what you say. And but like my fandom didn't end because I moved there. So on game days, like if we had like a Thursday night game or something, I would show up to the office like in full Eagles gear, and then like he would be like, "What are you doing? Are you cosplaying an eagle today?" And then I was like, I guess if you like very critically look at that, it's really silly for me to dress up in like Eagles gear as if I'm gonna like go take the field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Put me in, coach. Right.
Yeah. All 5'8" of me. But anyway, so whatever. So yeah, I guess anybody like that I offended by saying 1950s dress up is silly. I do it once a week on Sunday.
I think those events, they're intended to cater to a broader, deeper into the family, bringing the spouse and the family along. Because I know, there's pop-up tents for the clothing vendors. There's, drinks and more lifestyle activity going on than just cars. And I think that makes for a fun time. I wouldn't want every weekend to be one of those. I think it would be tedious after a while to have to get in a costume to go drive the car or whatever. But certainly think those events have merit. There's one I'd like to do. It's a charity drive, actually, and it kind of dovetails with the motorcycles and hot rod thing. The Distinguished Gentleman's Drive and the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. So it started out as a motorcycle ride, and the mandate is that you show up dressed dapper.
Okay.
And but it's I don't know what the age requirement is for that, but they recently launched a car version of it, the Distinguished Gentleman's Drive. And it's for 1970s and earlier cars, so up through 79, pre-1980. So I imagine the bikes are probably the same. And period correct-ish for whatever you're driving. There's not like, they're not grading you on whether, you're period correct in your dress, but you are expected to show up costumed on some level. And so it's another one. But that's actually a fundraiser for men's health, prostate research and stuff like that. And it's a global one. And it's all on. It's coming up. It's another one I never get to do.
Where's like our local one?
I think so. They changed. You have to petition to be a host. They don't actually organize anything other than it all happens on the same day globally. And so you petition. You have to make a case for yourself as an event organizer and how many people you're going to gather. And it's like other charity things. You get pledges for participating in it. And so I think the closest one this year is in Maryland. I've looked in the past. Occasionally there's one in New York. not a whole lot going on. I think it's one it would be great for us to be involved in or
Cover.
to cover. Yeah. But there's not one. There's not a Philly one. I petitioned a couple years ago and never heard anything back from it. So.
I've never done any of like the rallies or like the only thing I've ever done is like a poker run.
Yeah.
And it was like, local kid had passed away kind of thing, and everybody that knew him like did a run throughout the day, and that was cool. But like I've always wanted to do like, I think it's in like California. They do this like beetle rally where I don't know. You go from like Southern California to Northern California in like across a day or two or something like that, or like the Power Tour or anything like that. Like I would like to do one of them. There's a mini truck thing. I don't know if it still happens. It was called Cruise to the Pines. And they would do the same thing. Like everybody would meet somewhere and then drive like 200 miles. And it's like, that's cool because sitting in a parking lot and walking around stuff's rad. And like maybe you meet a person or two, but it's like they look way cooler moving. Like everything does, And
then you've got kind of a rolling party too. You've got your staging, your start off point, usually a midday break for lunch or whatever, and then drinks at the end of the day. Or that's a pretty common format for a lot of rally things. There's all kinds of vintage rallies that are like at the high end, the Colorado Grand and something like that. You've basically got to be a millionaire to participate.
I don't think I'm going to hit
You're dealing with a six-figure, race car, road car, and then staying at top-tier resorts and things, over multiple days. Not for working people, but
I feel like I've done everything besides the rally part of that on the exact opposite end. Like I've stayed at the worst Motel 6 on the planet. I'm fairly certain, but that's cool too, though. Like it'd be neat to, it's like I can appreciate Pebble Beach even though I'm never going to have a car there.
Yeah. There's a lot on the slate actually, and I like the driving events too. After doing a lot of parking lot stuff, it's nice to get off the asphalt and actually out on the road a little bit. So, let's talk about the Lowshow because we just came off of that last weekend. Jamie Orr, who was our second guest on the podcast here, local Pottstown guy. It was the fourth edition of the Lowshow, the third one that he's done in downtown Pottstown. And it was the first one you got out to, right?
Yep, yeah.
So I've been to the last three of them. It's a different kind of event. I came out of the VW culture. I had 7 Golfs, Rabbits, GTIs, whatever in a row when I was younger. And about, 20 years ago, morphed out of them. But I still am really connected to a lot of people in that scene.
You still have your Boxster. So it's like
it's part of the family. And we can actually talk about that because it was not strictly a VW show. It's a Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, the whole
good old VAG.
The good old VAG family there, or VAG if that's how you prefer to pronounce it. But so it's a party, or a family affair, I guess, for Volkswagen enthusiasts across the board. But I wanted to get your take as someone who's outside that culture, because we talked a little bit in past about mini truck culture being similar in a lot of ways to the current, VW cult scene or whatever. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the festival, the show, and some of the vehicles and what you saw and what you liked and didn't like. Yeah,
so I guess starting with the, how it's similar to kind of like where I come from is, so the Lowshow was like a full town takeover. And we'll get into that, but it's like it's more than just a car show that happens to be in a place, right? Because it's like you can have a car show anywhere. I've been to ones at casino parking lots or at Walmart parking lots or whatever. They're all parking lots. It's pretty boring.
Yeah.
So location is important. That's part of it. And like Lowshow takes over downtown Pottstown. It's the whole main drag. It looks like small town America.
It's over a quarter mile of.
You said that. I think it felt longer.
I said over a quarter mile. I couldn't get an accurate read, but I actually went on Google Maps and tried to scale it, just to get a sense. It's, I think, 6 full blocks of downtown, some of which are longer blocks than others. But and then side streets, a couple of side streets, Hanover and
once they like filled up the area, like every kind of side street would just end up as like also parking.
Yeah.
I'm like diverting, but you can always tell when a car show is pretty good when the parking lots have cool stuff in them.
Right.
So like I parked around the corner. I got there at like 10. I guess everybody else started getting there at like 8 a.m. or whatever, right? So it was mobbed, and had to walk like 10 minutes to get into the show. But even where I parked, I was like, I have a little Chevy Cruze as a daily, and it was like Audi, Volkswagen, Cruze, VW, VW. Like, and they were all cool. Like, they all had at least wheels or like a turtle or were lowered, or at the very least were just like so spick and span kind of thing.
Right.
And that's always like, before I even got to Main Street, I was like, or I guess High Street, I was like, this is going to be pretty good. And it was. I guess culture-wise, what I'm alluding to was like, you know, people kind of live and breathe it. It's like, they don't just own a Corvette and like drive it around and like cars. It's like, these people are like really into their car.
Yeah.
Like within, you know, it's within like 10 minutes of meeting them, I'm sure everybody knows that they like drive a Volkswagen. Yeah. And like, same thing, you like hang out with a mini trucker for very long and you're like, okay, this is like your thing. So that was cool. So I like the diehardness. It's like, because they go way harder. There's way more interesting stuff. It's like, it's not just wheels and like coilovers. It's like wheels, coilovers, matching interior. A lot of the cool thing about Volkswagens too is like, they're all really clean. Like, having a ratty Volkswagen isn't really a thing.
There are some. There's some, but yeah, largely the stuff that was on display was pretty tight.
Until you get to like okay, there's like older patinaed ones that are either survivors or like but it's like a deliberate look.
Beige first generation Jetta with the diesel stack through the hood. Did you see that one?
Yes.
So that's its own aesthetic, you know, that exists.
But that's like
grunge.
Yeah, I feel like it's rarer in that scene.
It is.
Most of it's like about having like the nicest, almost VIP level car, like you kind of can.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool. I don't know. We can talk specifics about the thing, but it does. It really feels just like the Trog thing. Feels like you're going into 1950s. It's like you're going into Volkswagen land,
right?
With Lowshow.
Yeah, I think the one of the cool things about, you know, you're talking about the cars being kind of done up to a high level. You've got Volkswagen at the entry level, Audi is kind of the premium, Porsche is the pinnacle. So you see this interchangeability of parts across. So you'll see a Golf with, you know, Audi wheels or an Audi with Porsche wheels, or, you know, seats, RS3 seats in a GTI or something like that. You know, this because they are fairly modular platforms. I mean, that's the obvious secret of modular construction like that, is a lot of that stuff just interchangeable. But they really do play up, you know, pulling up the lower end stuff pulling up the lower end cars with higher end trim and features and things like that. I think there is a lot. One of the things I noticed immediately is that it really is a DIY culture. There's a lot of pride in building it, not buying it. You see a lot of home built stuff, and you know, some of it's parts catalog stuff, some of it's craftsmanship, you know, but these guys are hands-on. They aren't handing over the car and a checkbook or credit card to somebody else to build for the most part. They're deeply involved in conceiving whatever the final project's going to be, building it out, and then showing it. So it's a pretty solid DIY culture there.
I think the other thing that's neat about it, and this is like, yeah, back to the whole DIY thing or builder thing, the uniqueness. So they're super modular cars, right? And like a lot of this standard stuff has all been done, like, you know, Porsche wheels on a V-dub or whatever. But they do manage to end up becoming like pretty unique pieces. And I think there's like, you know, I guess in a sea of a bunch of modified cars, it's really difficult to like find your own thing. But like they managed to do it. One of the coolest things I saw while we were there was there was a black Bug that had BBS wheels on it. And it was like debugged was the plate, which was funny.
Oh, I remember seeing the plate. Yeah.
But it had a spare, and it was a little skinny spare.
Oh, right.
But it was a full matching BBS
like
wheel.
Like a 4.5-inch wide BBS
yeah, I'm
with
like,
a mini spare.
How much money did you spend on this wheel to never use it?
No, like, but that's like the coolest feature, right?
But he knew. I mean, it was outside of the car. Like, it wasn't buried. But anyway, even if nothing else, like it was a cool Beetle, which is like, I think, a challenge for a newer Beetle on its own. But having this like matched spare was like another level of like, one, uniqueness, two, builder thing, and three, it was like, you know, that's like cool. I don't know. It was cool. I was about it.
I don't know if you noticed, but a real big element of the VW scene that I don't see in other like import tuner stuff is the attention to interiors, the plaid cloth. So for the 5th generation GTI, Volkswagen brought back the original plaid cloth, which we never got in our early cars here, but was common in Europe. And it kind of kicked off this whole, I don't want to say anti-leather, but, cloth is cool kind of wave. And Porsche's historically had, tartan cloths and houndstooth and checks and stuff like that. And so coming back to that kind of transfer across brands, you see a lot of plaid interiors, but done pretty well. There's cheap seats and you could throw plaid cloth on them, but they tend to do it pretty well across the board.
I for sure saw that, and I didn't really know the reason why, but I've seen that. Yeah, but I've seen that for a while. There was a quick tie-in, and then I have something to like the greater culture. But there was something like a Jetta there, and he had like the whole inner part of his seats was all done in like alligator skin. But then like the dash was wrapped to match, and then it was actually on air ride, and the compressors were also wrapped in alligator skin, which I was like, it's a bold choice, but it was cool because at the very least it all tied together. But like, and it wasn't leather. I guess it was alligator leather. I don't know. But another neat thing as far as interiors go, their plaid motif is rad though, and I've always seen it and like appreciated it. I think the cloth is cool thing though on a bigger level. Especially when you're back to your whole, like your first car, it's cheap. Mm-hmm. I've always said like, if I could like buy the perfect thing from the factory, it would be work truck. So like as a truck guy, but it would be work truck cladding, right? So like vinyl floor,
right?
Just gray interior, like not leather, black bumpers, that kind of thing. But then like top, like a 6.0 or 6.2 engine, if there's a 5-speed available, that. But so like, load up on like the power plant and then give me everything else basic because it's like you're gonna swap it anyway,
right?
And it's probably easier to do if it's like cheaper stuff. So I also think that there is an element of people like and appreciate the cloth interior just because it's like, well, that's what you could afford anyway.
Yeah, it's got a kind of a sleeper quality like steel wheels do, or it's down market. Leather has become so common. I mean, when I could have never imagined leather, Volkswagen Golfs when I first started buying them, right? It was just cheap velour and like hopsack cloth, some of the interiors in the earlier cars. Leather became so common really in the 90s across, not even luxury car platforms. You can get a Honda Accord with a leather interior back in the early 90s, and it's just become more common. So I think the cloth is a differentiator because leather's pretty plain, it's a great surface, but unless it's woven or, you're doing, there's a lot of over-the-top leather work too, like embroidery and things like that. But I think the cloth gives you an opportunity to be more expressive. You can tie it into the color of the car, and, you can still accent with leather on the bolsters and other parts for durability. We saw all kinds of stuff there. Didn't see a lot of, thankfully they've gotten away from like the plaid headliners and, like the Louis Vuitton, Gucci stuff, it was common. Like when Pimp My Ride was on TV, that's gone away. But I think the use of cloth has been pretty tasteful. At least what we saw at the Lowshow was pretty cool.
So there's like, I mean, if you look at, let's say tuners and Volkswagens as an adjacent / part of that, but any car culture over the last 20 years. We got the ability to like do all sorts of things, right? Like a bunch of tech came out, big wheels became a thing. We had access to all of these like different aftermarket things, be it like upholstery for your seats or dash wraps or ceilings or whatever. So like our other producer, Dave, actually shared with me the other day a clip from SEMA 2001, and it's like Del Sols on 20-inch spinners.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And like Hydras, like straight Fast and Furious 1 era stuff. And like cool in the sense of like now it's like almost a period piece.
Right.
But so we did a bunch of stuff. We hadn't quite figured out exactly how to like make that all coexist and work soundly. And then now I feel like over the past 20 years, it's like it's gotten refined and now it's like tasteful.
Yeah.
Nobody's putting 20.
The shock factor is certainly over with a lot of that stuff now. And, fads come and go. So, like, I don't know that anyone's missing spinners right now, but...
There's still, like, a small part of me that's like, how do we...
They're almost ironic now, though, aren't they? If they show up on spinners, it's almost
Or
ironic.
stays. Do you remember stays? So stays were, like, the opposite of spinners.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, you would cruise, and then they were, like, weighted, so they would stay.
Yeah. I think Rolls-Royce brought that out with their center caps when the new Rolls,
Like a big Phantom or something?
Yeah, when the Phantom first came out, and it made its way into the aftermarket, not surprisingly. Yeah. Was there anything you saw that like really turned you off or you didn't like? I can think of a couple things on my list, but
what's funny is like I am just like really I don't know. I'm like really unimpressed when I see like a Lambo.
Yeah.
I like them. Like if I had money, I'd totally buy a Lamborghini because why not? But like there's nothing done to them.
Yeah.
So you're in this like sea of awesome cars that are all unique, like I mentioned. And then it's like, cool, you're the same thing as like the dude in like the new Z06 Vet that rolled up to the Cars and Coffee. Like, it's cool. The car's cool.
Yeah.
But it's like, you're not cool because you parked here.
Yeah.
You're actually the lamest car here.
It's cool on its own, but in this context, it just kind of falls off.
So I don't know. I like didn't really care. I'd see them and then like I got one shot just to like, this was also here, but I like didn't give a shit.
And the Lamborghini reference is valid because Lamborghini is also owned by Volkswagen Group, as is Ducati these days, as is Seat, which is a brand most people won't know, but we actually donated paint to a Seat giveaway car. It's a European Spanish brand that's also now under the Volkswagen banner. So coming back to that whole big family thing, like everything was represented there, except maybe Bugatti. Bugatti's under the house too, but
that's also it's like that's like the next level where that would almost be cool again because it's like they're so rare.
There's so few, and to see a Bugatti parked on High Street in Pottstown would actually be bizarre. Funny. Yeah.
So I don't know. That was it. That was the only thing that I was like, I don't really care about this. Yeah. But otherwise, like I was down with seeing the fandom, the like lifestyleness. I mean, there were so many people, and then I know Jamie Orr's like a champion for Pottstown. To see like Pottstown kind of pop for the whole weekend was rad. Yeah,
it really transforms the town and has transformed the town permanently in a lot of ways. From previous events, we talked about his pop-up stores for his vendors for the event where they take over some of the vacant storefronts. And he's got fewer vacant storefronts every year to choose from for his vendors. In fact, his one vendor, FCP Euro, took over the park because they kind of outgrew their vendor spot. They bring a big display, and that was actually cool. To see the lawn with the deck chairs out there and live music and
it was
and like sprawling. It's not a big park, but to own the whole park for a vendor booth is really cool.
So I didn't put this together until I was like explaining it to somebody else, but they were giving out golf balls,
right?
And they had like three different golfs in like the parking lot, in the park, and I was like, oh, it's because it's
50th anniversary of the golf.
Yeah.
That's
like my VW dumbness.
Yeah.
But yeah, their takeover of the park was like one of the coolest things. It was like an activation where it felt seamless. Like they even took over the signage around it. And
that's something he's done from the beginning when he took over that downtown space. I think one year the liquor store that was down there, the state store, was vacant, but still had its state branding on there, and they took that over. And it's not just like vinyl graphics; it's full hard signs over doorways on sticks, like on posts. It's pretty incredible, the true takeover. And even FCP Euro, they took over the town hall, the borough hall signage. Had their label over that, so it was literally a town takeover.
I was trying to. We were talking about this before, but I always kind of geek out on like the production value of stuff, and I was like, okay, logistically, like at the very least, they got measurements and pictures, but like probably they had some local affiliate come out, scout this location. They had 3 meetings like over the course of several weeks to like discuss what their plan was going to be, and then like had to like buy, purchase, and build to like execute these things. So it's like it was no small lift, and there was like 3 stores I saw taken over plus the FCP Euro thing. So like 4 really unique spots that were completely devoted to the show. So like that's where it felt seamless, and the whole town takeover thing.
Yeah. My last note on the Lowshow, and we can move on after that, is coming back to the big family thing again. It's just how well like old cars played along with new cars. There wasn't a lot of times you get like clusters, like all the new stuff's going to go in this corner, and all the air cooled guys are going to get this space. There was no pre-sorted arrangement for the cars. They came in and were put in the order that they arrived, and there was an early 60s auto union on display out in front of, right next to the Lamborghini, I think it was out there. And, you know, modern Golfs, old Vanagons, Foxes, all, you know, the high end to the low end. A fair number more Porsches this year than in the past. Always a ton of Audis. The Audi Club brings out a good showing. But it didn't feel like there were clicks, you know, like it was all integrated. And that's not something you see at every show, even like all brand kind of shows. You know, people tend to segregate a little bit and go to their corner. And Nick mentioned that to me, and I was thinking the same thing. But
well, especially because like there's that big air cooled versus water cooled divide.
That's and when I came into this, I've always owned Volkswagen water cooled Volkswagens. I've never had an air cooled car. When I joined the first club in my early, I don't know, late teens, early 20s, I was like the only one with a radiator. I would show up and it was all these older people with Beetles and Carbon Gias and buses and stuff. And I remember when we started to gather some momentum, when VR6s came out, a few of us put together a Chicago Volkswagen organization. We started going to the other clubs' events, and they had one class for other Volkswagens that were water cooled, and you know there were more of us at one point.
And you were all
and they had one class that was as big as the rest of the show for water cooled.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the genesis of us starting our own thing. It's like, well, why would we come out if they're not going to play along? But that seems to have broken down now. At least at this show, not everywhere. But
I think there's probably think about somebody like a 20-year-old kid buying their first car at this point that's interested in that. It's like, well, a 1980s Golf is old, just like a 1960s Beetle is, or
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But anything like that in the sense of like they're just old cars to them, so it's like, well, what can I afford?
Yeah.
And I don't think they care whether it was water cooled or not.
Yeah. And the Beatles, you know, the air cooled scene's still active. Cody here, you know, is still playing around with the one he picked up last year. Nick's got a barn full of them. I don't know. I mean, do we even know? We don't know.
Yeah, I think like 7 or something.
Yeah.
And then probably like enough parts to build like another 3.
Yeah.
They just made so many, and they made them for so long.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there's just a giant aftermarket for them as well. I mean, Beetles are cool. I think Beetles will be around, you know, for another 100 years.
Like cockroaches.
Yeah, basically.
Moving on, let's talk about what's still coming up. There's still a little bit of season left. So I know last year you went to, was the Pumpkin Run over in New Jersey? Flemings Pumpkin Run. That was a kind of a different kind of event too, right?
Yeah, so Flemings is held, and we have an article on it on the garage.
Yeah, you covered it last year for us.
But it's in an old junkyard, so there's like a bunch of, you know, kind of old cool junk. Mm-hmm. Like kind of rotting into the ground at this point. I don't think it's been active for a long time, but that makes it kind of cool. It's anything you bring.
Kind of a graveyard feel.
Yeah, you know, and then like they have like some old buses and like fire engines and stuff. Which again, back to the family element. Like who doesn't little kids love the fire engine, as do I. And then they have like some cool old race cars. Like they call it like a race car museum. So there's kind of a bunch going on, plus a big swap meet, and then food vendors and stuff like that. Yeah. So like, yeah, there's a bunch. Like we went in the morning, got there at like 10 a.m. and we were there until like 5 or something.
It's like central New Jersey, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took us
Pine
like an hour and a half from Philly to get there.
Yeah. And you're going to that again this year?
Yeah, I plan to. Yeah, I think it's in like 1 month from today almost.
Yeah, a lot of stuff's going on in October. It seems to be the end of the season, locally for us anyway. We've also got Fall Hershey and Fall Carlisle, which are official events for Eastwood. I mean, the store goes out on the road and sets up at those events. Those are always, seminal events for the car club or for car culture. I went to Hershey last year to cover it, and it was hot. It was like 95 degrees, and it's like first week in October.
Yeah, it's funny how you can, like, also in this point in the year, it's like, one weekend will be 95 degrees, and then the next weekend it'll be like 55.
Yeah.
So which is also why these events start to taper off, especially in the Northeast, because you don't know what you're going to get. Yeah.
Yeah. Hershey's massive. If anyone's ever, or if you've never been, it's just a massive swap meet, really primarily a swap meet. There's professional vendors there as well. I found it last year. Was pretty vacant. There were a lot of gaps, and I'm not sure.
I heard it fell off a little bit.
Yeah, it seems to be falling off, but it tends to be an older crowd. It's AACA, right? So it's Antique Automobile Club of America, and that spot is challenging because they used to run it into the weekends. It's at Hershey Park, Yeah, the amusement park's staying open deeper into the season, and they don't want to compete with parking on the weekends. So we'll see how that goes this year. I understand this might be the last year it's going to be at Hershey Park, and that it's going to be moving to a different venue next year. So
I wonder where they end up moving. Like I think it was like Maple Grove and Atco used to do big swap meets too.
Yeah. So I'll probably still go out and poke around. There's always fun stuff to see. It's always photogenic too, because you never know what you're going to find playing out on a parking lot.
I always walking around swap meets is great. Like when we were younger, 20 years old with no money, we would just like go to the local U-Pull-It and just like bop around.
Yeah.
And also at that time, like all the stuff in the junkyard was what we were driving, so
right.
you could actually get some finds. Now it's too modern.
Right.
But doing a swap, like walking around a swap meet's the same thing. You're just like looking for like cool, interesting junk. And like I always found something like last year, they always have a bunch of beer signs, and my wife works in brewing, like for a beer company. So like I can always find either like a sign or like an old bottle or a can or something like that. Like you can, if you have like kind of cool friends and family members, you like want to grab a couple early gifts or something like that. Yeah. Like you can find some cool stuff.
That is one thing I noticed last year was there seemed to be more automobilia kind of stuff than actual car parts for sale. So I was thumbing through brochures and old magazine ads. I like collecting some of that stuff because it's cheap and doesn't take up a lot of space. And I use it for reference material sometimes. But was poking through stuff, Hot Wheels, like new and old alike, but a lot of like old coolers, old lamps, old toolkits and things like that. Much more so than actual hard car parts. And a lot of the car parts I saw were like so obscure. It was like no one's ever going to get rid of that Hudson fender, right?
Yeah,
because it's in bad shape and there aren't that many, buyers still for that part. So, but I'll probably still go out to Fall Hershey and
I want to check that one out. I mean, Flemings is probably a very similar crowd, but yeah, there's still value in going regardless.
Yeah.
And also there's like something fun about just like going back to like old school haggling.
Yeah.
Like some dude's like selling a lamp and it's marked for like $55 and you're like, dude, like $20.
Right.
And then you come by at like 9 a.m. and he's like, no, dude, it's worth more than that. And then you come back at like 2 and he's like 45.
Yeah.
And then you come back at the end of the day and he's like, all right, man, give me
Just
$15.
take it.
Yeah.
I don't want to load it.
Yeah, I don't want to put it back in the truck for the fifth show. So that's kind of fun.
Yeah. Carlisle, have you been out to Fall Carlisle?
So, I mean, one of the shows I hit was Truck Nats
right.
at Carlisle because they do like 9 events throughout the year or whatever.
Right.
I haven't been to Fall Carlisle. I helped set up Spring Carlisle last year for us, but no, I haven't been out. So maybe I'll go.
Carlisle events are generally pretty reliable for crowd, and some of them are more focused. Spring and fall are kind of everything, right? So. I know the store will be out there, and I think some of us are maybe taking a trip out there for Carlisle. This weekend, at the other end of the spectrum, is our local Concours event, the Radnor Hunt Concours, and I'm going to go out to that. I've got friends who are judges in that. Ed Sweeney from Proper Noise is one of the judges. We've had him on the show and covered him as well.
Also back to dressing up.
Yeah. There's
the Concord event again.
There's not a mandate for it at a Concours event. The Concours event at the other end of the scale is really it's a restoration and preservation focused historical cars. So Radnor Hunt generally does a pretty good job of pulling together strong themes. It looks a little looser this year, but in the past they'll coalesce around like a particular designer or Fiat Abarth, which is the performance division of Fiat, which probably doesn't sound all that impressive now, but like 60s and 70s Abarths were really
when they
cool.
came out with the 500 here, the Abarth edition, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Plus they had Charlie Sheen in a commercial for it, so it was like really hitting all the 2012 notes.
Exactly. But these are preserved or restored cars, so this is where you're judged on how accurate your restoration is, how perfect your presentation. They're not looking for slippery black white wall tires and stuff. They're looking for everything that looked like it just came off the factory floor, as perfect as can be. It's a smaller setting. The cars are invited out, so you can petition. You can say, I've got a car that fits this class, and petition to be invited. But you don't just show up. Mm-hmm. These are hand-selected cars for specific curation, and definitely a higher-end event. It's $75 a ticket or something. it goes to a charity, for all the, I won't demean them, but it goes to an equestrian charity, on the main line. So, the underprivileged kids can ride horses too. Yeah. But every Concours event has a charity, and it's a great way to, it justifies spending good money and getting dressed up. So I'll go out and do that. One of our board members is probably going to be there anyway, but it's something I've gone to several years. It is an old school mainline fox hunting club. Historically, they bring out the hounds and ride around in the hunting carriage and their red coats and everything. It's it's a different spectacle for sure than Lowshow, 180 degrees.
Yeah.
But also part of the fabric of car culture, and a lot of times the cars are notable. A lot of times there's historical. They've got significant race history or some ownership history. And a lot of times the current owners are notable as well. Locally we don't get a lot of celebrity owners, but Pebble Beach and Amelia Island and some of the other large Concours events here and around the country, they really bring out like top tier beyond Jay Leno. I mean, Jay Leno is a predictable.
That was the obvious one.
Yeah, he's the obvious one always, but there's other notable, Ralph Lauren and other high caliber car collectors. So just another end of the spectrum, but kind of a nice way to finish out the season.
Yeah, well, and like I was saying about the Pebble Beach thing, it's like I can appreciate that too. I'd even I have plans this weekend, but I'd go as as a spectator just to check it out. Like that sounds fun.
Yeah. It's more like an open air museum experience.
Yeah, well,
quite frankly.
I was gonna say, obviously I like heavily modified vehicles, but I can appreciate the historical fact of keeping a Survivor. Yeah. Or an example of what it looks like when it came off the assembly line. That's cool.
Yeah.
Maybe not make my exact cup of tea, but I'm down that is part of it. And as far as car culture as a bigger thing, I think if that guy and I am in the same parking lot, it's it's the real recognize real kind of thing. You can be like, all right.
Yeah.
You're still doing it. You're still hopping in your old hoopty. Yours just looks really good.
Yeah. I think the thing about a really well-run Concours event is the curation, is bringing in an eclectic mix of cars that you're not going to see anywhere else together. Having been to numerous Concours events over the years, that's the one takeaway is a well-planned Concours is curated storytelling. It's pulling in a theme and bringing together cars that probably have never been in the same place together, So, totally different experience, but well worth it.
Yeah. No, if
you can afford the $75 ticket.
It's for charity.
The food's good too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so anything you're working on now going into fall on your own? Projects and stuff, and we'll wind it down.
Basically just, the big thing this year was I got my truck back on the road. We did a bunch of work on it here. Yeah. And, it's bagged on air ride, so it always has its own little quirks. But we did a bunch of work on it. I got to drive it all summer, but it still has some stuff I need to do. Took it to Carlisle, broke a couple things. So I've been fixing it this week for us to go give some donations to a local food pantry.
Right.
But just plan on driving it for another month and then probably pulling it off the road. And then I want to do some interior stuff. Yeah. And I have new headlights for it that are more modern that'll probably irritate a bunch of purists that I want to put in. But nothing radical.
I promise you we'd do a headliner. We'll do a headliner together.
Yeah, we have that. That's for my Silverado.
Oh, okay.
My Silverado has it was from California, which is great. So it's the only rust-free 05 Chevy. But
in all of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. But the heat out there, it must have sat inside, or sat with all the windows up, and it hit 140 degrees or whatever, and the headliners started to sag.
All modern headliners sag eventually. They're horrible.
Yeah.
The foam just breaks down and it delaminates.
But yeah, nothing crazy. There's one other event called Rebellion. That's the first week of November.
Okay.
That I'm interested in going to, but I also don't
with the truck.
Yeah, I don't have heat or AC, so it's going to be completely dependent on weather. If it's 65 or above, I'll go. If it's 50, I'm hopping in with a buddy.
Yeah, totally get that.
What about you?
hoping to finally get around to doing, I'm getting really close on the Project Sunny, the Range Rover project here, to getting the chassis stripped down. So I'm hoping in the next week or so we can get it rolled out, power wash the frame, get the engine transmission off of it, tear the axles down, and get down to restoring the frame and the chassis components. And then over the winter, actually go back to working on bodywork inside, because I won't have to roll that out. But I think we're going to do some blasting outside on the chassis while the weather's still reasonably comfortable.
It's actually, I mean, it's better to do that now than a month ago.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. Well, we've had a really hot summer, and so far off to a really cool fall. So, yeah, it's a Range Rover always. That one's going to be a long project. Clearly, I'm in too deep.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm looking at it. It's in 2 large pieces.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool. You know. And like your frame wise is in pretty good shape, so that'll be an interesting thing. Lots of cool stuff to
That's
follow
mostly
along.
refinishing. There's one small patch that I need to make in the frame on a non-structural part of it, so that should be pretty quick. And then it's going to be a refinish job on that, and then I can go back to the actual metal work.
Yeah, I guess
on the body.
As far as like upcoming things for anybody that also watches our YouTube, so we have a bunch of Project Sunny stuff coming.
Right.
We're gonna have a bunch of new welding content that we're working on right now. Always new products. I know that R&D guys have been going.
Yeah, we've got a lot on the slate for new products.
We've got some more plasma table stuff coming out, but we also, the one video's out. We're doing, speaking of 2001 Fast and Furious era, we are doing a Fast and Furious replica car.
Yeah,
it's painted.
You're doing the video production on the paint job right now, right?
Yep. So that's
Is it coming back to us for work after?
It's going to come back to get like wet sand and buffed.
Okay.
So just fixing a couple of the errors that we had while painting in the booth.
Is he vinyl wrapping the second color?
So it's just like really loud graphics, but yeah, it's vinyl.
It's graphics. Okay. Yeah. We're not painting the white on top of the Kawasaki green.
No.
Okay.
But so, like, I went over and checked it out today. The doors are back on. The decklet's back on. It needs glass and interior. But anyway, so that project's, like, coming out. But, yeah, so lots of cool stuff. And then my favorite, we always get a good Christmas video every year.
Right.
So I get to look forward to that. Get the creative juices flowing.
We haven't figured that one out yet, right?
No, I mean, it never does good view-wise, but it is a lot of fun to make.
Yeah.
So.
You have to do that once in a while.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, that's mostly it.
Cool. It's been great just sitting down and chatting. We didn't have a guest lined up, and we wanted to keep the momentum going with the podcast. And you're always.
I'm glad to be a filler.
Yeah, you're an awesome filler and a fine feller.
Thanks.
So, yeah, how's that for a dad joke?
Yeah, that was solid.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Check us out, and we'll see you on the next episode.
All right.
Thanks.